tonight. I just cannot even put into words how happy I am that we are all in the same room in the flesh. This feels so good. Yeah, I feel like that deserves a big round of applause. And I think tonight, I hope that mentees and mentors are able to really connect. We were talking in our meeting this morning about how that feels like the part that's hard to really capture over Zoom are those relationships and that relationship building. So we're really hoping that, the start of meeting in person officially again is going to just really help everybody's relationships and you all feel really comfortable with one another. So we do have an amazing speaker here tonight that I am so excited to introduce to you all. Before I introduce Miss Franci DaLuz, I do have a few announcements, just 3 quick T2 announcements. First is mostly for the students, and I know we have spoken quite a bit about this in advisory, but just a reminder, for those of you that have not turned in the junior teacher comment and recommendation form, those are due to us. So you all need to have sign-offs from 2 teachers who are going to write letters of recommendation for you for college, and 1 teacher signed off who's going to write you a teacher comment. If anybody is struggling to find a teacher or to decide who to ask, please speak with one of us. We're more than happy to help. But those forms are due to us as soon as possible. And I know Ms. Garrity has been in touch with many of you about that. The next announcement I have is just related to the handout that you received on the way in, or you should have grabbed. And that's the diversity fly-in program handout. So hopefully it's many pages stapled together. But basically what those are is it's a list of programs that are offered to historically excluded or underrepresented groups on college campuses. So that does include first-gen students, low-income students, students of color, and there are dates and deadlines to apply to those programs. But basically what they are is it's an opportunity for you to visit that specific college, and typically the college funds that visit. So if it's a flight away, they will pay for your flight. If it's a drive away, they'll pay for your transportation. Many of them have an overnight component, so they'll either put you up in the dorms or a hotel. It is a great way for you all to truly experience a college campus, and you all are the exact candidates that these colleges are looking for. So if any of the schools that you're considering are on that list of diversity fly-in programs, please do look into it and consider applying. And if anybody needs help with that, help applying or has questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And then the only last announcement I have is just about our final meeting of the year. And so that is going to be in here on Tuesday, June 7th from 6 to 7:30. And that meeting is going to be really, really helpful for you all in terms of planning what you're going to do over the summer in terms of your college application process. We are going to have a speaker here that is going to talk and introduce the college essay to you all. And she's also going to run a brainstorming activity for your college essay. So it should be a really great meeting, a good way to end the year. So please make sure that's on your calendar. Again, that's June 7th from 6 to 7:30. Any general T2 questions before I turn this program over? No? Okay. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ms. Franci DaLuz, who is the Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Salem State University. For some of the mentors here, you've heard Franci speak a few times. We were just talking about how I've known Franci now for 10 years. Our lives collided at a previous job for both of us. And we've continued to stay in touch because Franci is such an amazing person for you all to get to know and to hear from. She is going to tell us her first-gen student story, so all the way from her childhood, and I think you'll all be blown away by the messages that she has to share with you and what she's sort of learned along the way. So without further ado, Ms. Franci DaLuz. Sorry, and also one more thing I just feel like I should tell you is that we are recording this event. There's a laptop here. The only person that will be on the screen is the person at the podium, but just so you all know, it is being recorded.
Can everyone hear me okay? Oh my God, so much pressure after that introduction and being recorded. So welcome everyone. This is such an an amazing opportunity. I'm so excited to be here in person. It's been 2 years. First of all, I want to congratulate all of you for having the past 2 years, one of the hardest 2 years of your lives with everything. I mean, the pandemic has changed so much for all of us, but you're here and you're rising seniors, right? And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about my own experience as a first-gen student. Before I do that, is there anything in particular that you want to know, or you're curious about, or you're anxious about as a first-gen yourself? Okay, well, hopefully at the end you'll have more questions, because I prefer the interaction. So I'll try to summarize a very crazy story in a very short amount of time. Again, my name is Franci. I am a first-gen immigrant, first-gen college student, Latina. I have many hats, which I'm all very proud of, but it took me a very long time to figure things out, and I think I'm still learning because I'm still a first-gen student even now. Even though I'm a second-year PhD researcher, I'm still very much in those shoes. So I migrated from Brazil to the US when I was 8 years old. My parents don't speak English, they still don't. They never went to college, they didn't finish high school. So it was a very crazy journey, kind of navigating that as a high school student, like all of you. Because when I was in your seats at this very time as a high school junior, I didn't have papers. And so I was not only overwhelmed with the fact that I really wanted to go to college, but it felt like a very distant dream. It was even more distant dream because at the time I didn't have a social security number attached to my name. That kind of worked itself out as I became a senior. But by that point, I was, again, overwhelmed by that whole experience of not knowing what to do, what to ask, where to search for help. I didn't have an amazing program like this, 100 years ago when I was in high school. We didn't have any of this. We didn't have an opportunity for somebody to sit down with you and to kind of explain what the process was. Even though the process is very simple, looking back now, I've been doing admissions for 10 years. It is sitting down and filling out a college application is a very simple process, but at that moment, it didn't feel that way. Plus, 100 years ago when I was in high school, there was also a lot of stigma and bias for people who went to community college. So automatically, that also added, an additional piece of anxiety on top of my young self, because I thought, well, if I go to community college, then I'm a failure. I'm a double failure, right? I didn't go to college. I'm not applying anywhere like my peers are. If I end up in community college, I'm a failure. I'm dumb. All those things are kind of, tossed upon you. Not only that, I was one of the first recipients of the Abigail Adams Scholarship. Like, that's how old I am. They invented the scholarship when I was still in high school. So I was one of the first people to get it, and I actually didn't end up using the scholarship because it was awarded around this time, end of May, in my class. I had not filled out a single college application. So clearly, academically, I was ready for college. Personally, mentally, I had no idea what I was doing. So it took me 2 years after high school to finally kind of get the ball rolling. And how that happened was, my mother is a house cleaner, and I was helping her over the summer. And I think that man is an angel, because it's one of her clients. We were chatting. He was like, well, why are you not in school? Like, what's going on? And I was like, well, I really want to go to school. I just don't know how. It's really expensive. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm never going to be able to afford it. And so he was like, well, how much is a class? And I said, well, it's like $350 at a community college, whatnot. So he went downstairs, he gave me a check, and he said, okay, go sign up for school. You need to be in college. And so I went to the local community college, and for the first time ever, somebody understood what I was going through. They sat me down and said, okay, well, this is how you fill out a FAFSA. This is what we're going to do. This is how you fill out an application. We're going to register you for Sociology 101. You're going to take this class over the summer. Your FAFSA is going to be ready. We'll get you enrolled for fall. And so finally, somebody understood. Somebody that knew what I was going through, because they were either first gen themselves, or maybe they're used to working with first gen students. They understood what I needed, what kind of questions I wasn't asking to help me with that process. And no, needless to say, that was it. I started, did really well in my social class that summer, not in May, enrolled for classes in the fall. And while I was doing that, the advisor that sat me down, paired me up with professors that they thought would be good support systems for me. They said, you should take this class with Professor Harris. She's amazing. She's going to help you. Professor Harris became my first mentor. She's now my best friend. We go on vacation together. We still talk about that time, over a decade later. But Professor Harris is also first gen. She's a Black woman from New York, and she's the most amazing person I've ever met in my life. And she still does to this day. She does the same for her students. She understands how to work with them, She has a PhD in psychology. She kind of treats them like her clients. So she kind of has that, take a step back. Let's talk about what's going on. Let's figure things out. And so from then on, I finally had that support system and understood what I needed. And so from there, I was able to then transfer to a 4-year university. I got to go study abroad at Oxford University, which was an incredible opportunity, which I, again, didn't think I would ever make it. And in the middle of all of this, I was still struggling with something that you guys might not know. I don't know how many of you know the term imposter syndrome. Great. Well, this makes me very happy that you've heard of imposter syndrome, because this is something that some of you in this room are going to feel at some point. Maybe you feel it now already, but I guarantee you at some point during your college career, you're going to feel it. I feel it now. I was just talking to Jill about how I have a colleague. So I'm doing my PhD in technology and advanced learning at Lancaster University UK. And so, I have a close knit of researchers that started the program with me. And one of them is also a first-gen student. Now, we have nothing in common. This is a white man from England, but he's also the first in his family to go to college. And we always have these conversations about imposter syndrome and how inadequate we feel. It took us 2 years into a PhD program to feel like we belong there, even though we're still getting good marks and, obviously made it 2 years, haven't been kicked out of the program. So it's going to follow you no matter where you go. You're just going to know how to understand it, overcome it, or at least know how to deal with it. But understand that that's going to happen. Now, what's going to help you along the way when these feelings come is having support systems around you. And so as rising seniors, and now you're applying for colleges, hopefully you'll be visiting some colleges over the summer. Think about what support systems look like for you, right? Yes, we are all first-gen students in this room, but we all come from different identities, different backgrounds, different experiences. So find your people. And mentors. I actually wrote a paper called Find Your People, talking about mentoring relationships as an underrepresented student that I think they'll be sharing with you later. But it's really about that, right? Everyone find your tribe, because yes, many colleges are going to offer a psychology degree or an English degree, but what else are they offering you as a person, as a human being, as a first-gen student? And so the homework that you should be working on over the summer, or when you're visiting schools, have a list of questions that address that you can ask the admissions officers or whoever you meet at the college campuses that you visit. There was an institution that I attended for some time where they had a first-gen program, and the people that showed up for their first-gen programming were people who their parents were not the first ones to graduate from that school. So clearly, they had no idea what first-gen meant. That was just not the vibe at that place. You know what? That's perfectly fine. But that's something that would have made me uncomfortable as an undergraduate. I wasn't an undergrad anymore, and so I could deal with that. But I can only imagine being, 18 years old and going to this event that I thought was going to help me kind of figure things out, find support, and realize, oh, the people here their parents went to college and they didn't go to this specific college. And so whatever that support system or whatever makes you feel at home, like whatever that means for you, try to find that at the institutions that you're looking for. Because again, at some point, those feelings are going to come knocking, and you're going to need somebody to turn to. Like, hopefully you stay in touch with your mentors now, and they will be a nice, a good source of support, but you also need that support on campus, whether it's additional tutoring, whether it's clubs and organizations, like whatever that means for you. So I'll tell you another story that just happened this week, and I was thinking about this as I was driving here, how kind of things have come full circle in my life. I have a student that works in the admissions office. She works at the front desk, so she's one of my employees. Now, she's a wonderful student. She's very nice. We always chit chat when I get there. And I came in a couple weeks ago, and she looked really stressed and anxious, and I thought something's up. What's going on? And she was like, well, I'm working on this paper, but I feel completely paralyzed. Now, somebody else might have just missed it, like, oh, maybe she's just like lazy and she doesn't want to do this work, and then I sensed there was something else happening behind all that. So I took some time, my schedule was clear that day, and I sat down with her and I had a conversation with her, and then I realized, so she's a first-gen student. She doesn't really have any support at home. Like, her parents are also immigrants. They haven't gone to college. So they couldn't really help her figure things out. She already took this class last semester. She failed the class because she wasn't sure how to do the assignments. The assignment was a research proposal. So then she's taking the class again with a different professor, and she approached the professor and said, I need help. I don't understand the assignment. And he said, go to the writing center. And so she went to the writing center with her assignment and they said, you don't have a draft. How are we supposed to help you? Now, not only the professor, but the writing center failed the student, right? Because guess what? Maybe if her parents had gone to college, they could have said, hey, like, this is what you need. Like, when you go to a writing center, you should bring a draft and they're going to help you. You know, I could have said that because I've been to college before. She didn't know that, but she was completely overcome with anxiety, with feeling helpless, feeling inadequate. She was like, I'm going to fail. I'm never going to graduate. And like, you have to understand these feelings that you're feeling, there's a name to it. So I pulled up an article on imposter syndrome and immediately she went, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm feeling. And I said, yeah, that's what it is. You feel like you don't belong here, not because you're dumb or you don't know what you're doing. You're not getting the help that you need, but you didn't know that you weren't getting the help that you need because you've never been through this before and there's nobody else in your immediate circle that's been through this before and can tell you this. And so we sat down for an hour. I showed her some research proposals and we talked about her paper. And then today I walked into the office and she had this huge smile on her face and she said, guess what? Remember that paper that you helped me with? I was like, yeah. She goes, 17 out of 20, I passed my class. And so find those people. And as I was telling Jill earlier, had I been somebody else, she might have, I could have completely missed that. But I saw myself in that student. I saw myself 10 years ago freaking out and doing the exact same thing, completely self-sabotaging and saying, I'm just not gonna do anything because I'm dumb and I'm gonna fail out and I shouldn't be here because I'm not supposed to be in college or this is not for me. And so I recognized that and we kind of had that conversation. She was able to calm down and go, you know what, I can do this. And so again, if you could take anything away from me babbling at you tonight is find your people, find those resources on campus. It is extremely important that you do that. And how you do that is asking those questions. So what do you do for your students? What kind of organizations do you have on campus? Is there additional support? How do you treat us? Because yes, everybody wants diversity. Everybody wants underrepresented students on their campus and they love the numbers. I work in admissions, right? We're all about numbers. But what else are they doing once you get there? Because that's the important part is once you get there. Because the academic side is, part of your college experience, but what's going to shape you as a human being and get you ready for the world is going to be what's happening outside of the academic world as well. So like I said, anyone can give you a degree in English, but what else are they giving you and what's going to get you to the finish line? What's going to get you to the finish line successfully is having those supports, is having someone that's going to reassure you, and mentors, that's you, is sometimes just saying, hey, you're doing okay. I had a conversation with one of my former mentors and I asked her about what she does in her classes and whatnot. If you read the paper, you'll get a glimpse of that. And she told me, she said, you always did really well. You were a really good student. You were doing excellent work. She's like, but you didn't know that. And my students don't know that. So it's not about just praising the student, that maybe isn't doing so well, so we get them to do well. She's like, you also have to praise the students that are doing well because a lot of times they don't know that. And they're lost and they're confused and they're anxious. So mentors, like, even if your mentee seems like they're kicking it and they know what they're doing, it's still important to reassure that. For you, when you go home and your parents, maybe you feel like they can't help you. I completely get it. Like my mom, I think still can't explain what any of my degrees are. Like she's still on a weekly basis, she'll be like, what exactly do you do? And what are you doing? Like, when do you finish your PhD? Like, when are we having another party? Yeah, hey, 2 years left. And so she couldn't help me. And, at any point that can turn into anger, into frustration. You can be like, oh my God, this person can't help me. Like, I really need support. Find ways that they can support you or talk to them because they do want to help you. They just don't know how. So they might be equally frustrated with you, because they don't know how to participate. So like, I try to explain very patiently what I'm doing. Sometimes my mom's like, I just don't understand, but I like, what do you need? And I'll be like, oh, can you just make me some coffee while, I'm pulling an all-nighter? Or she'll be like, it's 5 a.m. Like, why did you not go to sleep yet? And so find something in common. Like maybe just take a trip together to go visit a school. They might not understand what's going on. Like when my parents don't speak English, they don't understand anything that was happening. But they still, were there for me and I still felt that love and support. And so just remember that, be kind to each other. Yes, you're going to be frustrated if you need extra support. You have your mentors to do that, but find that other way, with your family members who want to be part of this process. It is like, it takes a village. Like it really takes a village. And so talk to everyone, find your people, find your supports, because that's really what's going to get you to the finish line. When you get to wherever you end up, find your people there too. It doesn't have to be all first gen people, but people that you connect, that you trust, that it might be one person, it might be 10 people, who knows, like maybe you're a social butterfly, you find, a club. It might be just a one mentor that really sees something in you that's going to push you. I've had many of those along the way. I cannot, as an undergraduate, I almost didn't go to Oxford because I freaked out. And it was my advisor at the time. She was a mentor in my department, and she pulled me down. And she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was crying, being like, "I can't afford this. This is crazy. Why did I get in?" She was like, "This is going to open so many doors for you. Like, stop freaking out. Stop questioning yourself. You're capable of doing this. Like, if you got in, you're going." And at the time, I didn't feel it that way, but I made it. And so having those people that are going to support you along the way is probably one of the most important things as a first gen student. And that's something to ask, how many first gen faculty or how many faculty of color in the college that you're looking for, because that makes a huge difference. A huge difference. Because again, just like I was able to recognize something in the student that I helped with, a couple weeks ago, somebody else was able to recognize that in me as a student, and so on and so forth. And then I'll just close with one final anecdote. Talking about colleges that really, invest in supporting their students and asking those questions. So I just recently started working at Salem State. I've been there for about 2 months. One of the things that really surprised me, or made me really happy when I was walking around. So you start a new job and meeting all the different departments. So I went to Student Navigation Center. That's like their one-stop shop. Like financial aid is there, all these different departments. So I was working with the director, and I walked in the door, and there was like this big panel, and they had this little student resource guide. It's like a cheat sheet of like what all the things you have to do, right? Once you get admitted, your housing, et cetera, et cetera. And they have these cool panels. And then I noticed that they had the stuff in English, and they also had the same student resource guide translated in Spanish. And they had things in Spanish, on the wall as well. So I asked, "Oh, that's really nice. It's a cool initiative from the university." He said, "No, we did this ourselves. We, worked with a student that is one of our work studies, and she helped us translate, and we knew that we needed to provide this for our students." So that made me so happy, because again, here's somebody taking the extra steps to support the students, to understanding what the students need, and not only the students, but their parents, right? And I'm seeing this all across campus again. And that makes me really happy. And there will be institutions where you'll get those glimpses of like, what is it that people are doing? What's happening here? And there'll be places where, quite frankly, you are not going to feel that, where you're going to immediately step in and be like, "I feel really out of place here." And it's not because I'm a first gen student, it's because I just don't fit in, right? Trust your gut. Think about those things when you're visiting colleges, because again, the academic experience, you can get that anywhere. I promise you, you could go to a community college and still like get your PhD at Harvard. The sky's really the limit. It's how are you going to be supported and what's going to get you to the finish line. How are we doing on time? Because I can just talk forever.
People feel like they want to.
Yeah, please ask questions. Please interact. I don't get to get out much and talk to people. So, yes. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if you said this already, but did you go to school at New York or?
I did not. I went to Everett High School. Yeah. We got our butts kicked at soccer every year by Newton North. So I was very anti Newton North when I was in high school, because we always lost championships to Newton North. Yes.
Franci, if you could talk about, if a student came to your campus at Salem State, what kind of first generation opportunities would they have to connect to other students? What kinds of resources do you provide to help them with academic support and other types of issues they might encounter?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have like different clubs or organizations. We actually have a center called the Center for Social Justice and, oh geez, I'm gonna mess up the name. Center for Social Justice and something else. Sorry, still getting used to the titles. But within that center, we have different clubs and organizations. So we have like a Latinx Society, we have a First Gen Club. We have many different organizations so students can come together if they just want to meet like-minded students. Salem State also is very serious about hiring diverse faculty and staff. So a lot of the people on campus are very aware of what our students need, because we've been there ourselves or we've been studying So even, I've met allies on campus who are not necessarily first gen, but they're very adamant that we need to, work with our students. Obviously, nothing's perfect, but people are very excited and very passionate about supporting our first gen students. We have a lot of different programming for first gen students, different events, speaker series, and things like that. The tutoring center is something that we always highlight. A lot of students always mention that is one of the key things and one of the best things that they found at the campus, because the writing center will support students, in those first classes. We have different faculty or staff that go to the first gen classes, the first year classes, and talk about the different resources on campus. Because sometimes it's just that, it's not necessarily having that first gen programming, is exposing first gen students to the programming that they just don't know is available. Because that's what I found as a first gen student. It's not about like having a first gen club, it's just knowing, oh, I'm supposed to go to office hours, like that's a thing that people do. And it wasn't until somebody told me that I realized I wasn't dumb for asking for help. Like the professor literally has hours and they just sit around to help you. Yes.
Well, and they want to be there.
They want to be
help
there.
you. They want you to learn material.
Exactly.
So when you have a tutoring center or writing center, those are services that the college provides that the student doesn't have to pay for.
Correct.
On top of what other things that they do.
Correct. Yeah. So in addition to the writing center, which is anybody can go to for help, we also have the peer. So we have peer and professional tutors, right? So professional tutors work in the writing center, and the peer tutor is going to be a student that did really well in that class, like they got an A, and now they get a stipend, they get paid to tutor students that come in and take that class the following year. And so that tends to be really popular too, because sometimes you just want to hear from a peer, right? You want somebody same level as you to help you through that work through that paper. So I think the key thing is not necessarily having those first gen specific programming. Yes, that's great, but how are people around campus kind of identifying the resources that you need and just pointing you to the right direction, right? And so just letting you know, hey, like this is what office hours mean, like this is when you should come, here's the writing center, here's all these things that you can participate in. So that's what we try to do, is let students know. So like I always, if I'm speaking to a student, let's say an open house or accept a student stay, and they're telling me like, oh, I'm worried about how I'm going to pay for college or et cetera. I'm like, come work for me. Like, we pay you $15 an hour to work in admissions, become an ambassador. So letting students know there's other resources on campus, or hey, go talk to this person. This person could be a really good resource for you for X, Y, and Z reasons. So just kind of being aware. I think we have faculty and staff that are very much aware of who our students are. Every single meeting and every single conversation I'm part of, it's all about like, this is who our students are. What can we do for our students? Even today we had a meeting about commencement. First question that somebody asked was, are we also doing this in Spanish? Are we going to translate this for our students and families? And so it's always in the back of everybody's mind, how can we service our students? And we're really aware of who our student population is. That's what you should look for anywhere that you go. Ask the tough questions. Anything else? Yes.
Like years ago to ask those questions, like how do you get those questions answered?
Sure. So definitely ask, talk to admissions. We should not lie to you. Typically if you're going on a tour, you're going to be touring with, you're going to have a student tour guide that's going to be taking you around. Student tour guides are an invaluable resource because typically they will tell you like it is, right? They're not going to sugarcoat it. They're going to tell you what their experience is. That's the first thing actually you should think about. Like, oh, does everyone look the same? Is there diversity even within our admissions office? Start there. But really talk to the students, or even if you see somebody on campus, like sometimes you'll go for a tour and you're having lunch have lunch in the cafeteria, sit around. Also pay attention to all the posters and things around. Colleges, we love putting a lot of posters about everything everywhere. That's going to give you a clue of what's happening on campus, right? Like pick up a student newspaper. Most schools are going to have their own newspaper. What's written there, right? You're going to find some really interesting information if you ever pick up a college newspaper. Let me tell you, you're going to find out a lot about the school, not always what the school wants you to find out. So it's a really good way to understand what's happening on that campus. And so pick up the newspaper, talk to students around you. If you know anyone about that school, ask them questions. Like, hey, how was your experience? What did you do there? What did you like? What didn't you like? Start there, and then the questions kind of start coming up. You start developing your own questions, but you get a lot of insight. Just kind of going that roundabout way, I would say. Or go on Twitter. go on Twitter and search the school, see like what people are hashtagging. It's always fun. It's always interesting. You know, go to their social media pages. Like obviously the admissions or some like the school sponsored pages are very, you know, strict on what they're posting, but just see what other students are posting. Like what are they doing? I mean, what's happening on campus? You'll find out about events, like who's going to their events, what kind of events are happening. That gives you a lot of insight of what's happening at the school. Yes.
Can you talk about the environment at your school or maybe some of the schools that you've attended for students who are undocumented? A lot of undocumented students are worried about being harassed on campus. Campus a safe environment for students who are undocumented.
That is a great question. So I was at UMass Boston when the former president was elected. And one thing that really struck me when I was there was how the faculty and staff all came together. I mean, it was a very sad day. But they were very worried about undocumented students. Obviously, there was a different climate. You know, there was a lot of tension with undocumented students after they had repealed and all of that. And immediately we had emergency meetings about how are we going to support our students, how are we going to make them feel safe. All of the institutions I've worked at have always been safe environments for students. But I also choose to work at institutions that I believe are going to provide that environment. So I'm very, very careful in choosing where I go. And then currently, even now at Salem State, we don't document at all the students undocumented on our application because we don't want to be subpoenaed and have to provide that information to anyone. It's not information that's required, so we just chose not to put it in our application. So you're safe. You don't have to disclose that. So a lot of schools will do that. They're, you know, we'll try to protect the students as much as possible in those ways. Like we're not going to give any information that we're not required to give. And all of these institutions that I've worked at, both 4 year or 2 years, I've also worked at a community college. There was very much a sentiment of let's protect and everywhere our students, let's support them in any way possible. We know that sometimes undocumented students, unlike DACA, might not be able to qualify for scholarships or aid. So we try to, at my former institution, we created a scholarship that wasn't named the undocumented scholarship, but that was kind of like a, hey, oh, you just mentioned to me that you're undocumented, here, apply for this scholarship. The name wasn't there, but we all knew that was what it was for. And so we will try in every way to support our students and get them through the process. But that's a good question. And if you're in that situation, definitely pay attention and look around and see what's happening. Yes.
Oh, sorry about this. I would just share a little information because I worked at Salem State for like 19 years. So when you're talking about what Salem State does, I can share a little bit, but also for others, when you go visit the school, as you were suggesting, you look around on the newspapers, the billboards, and what activities are going on and all. And what I was going to say specifically to this question is when you go to a accepted information session, you can see what options they have for you and your parents. So at Salem State, when I was there, we had a session for undocumented students so that you could tell that this was a welcoming institution. Because when they had options, you want to go to athletes, you want to go to the military, or if you, and it was mainly for the parents who would come with their students, and it would be a special section where you could go with your options and find out about DACA or find out about undocumented students.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you weren't undocumented, that would give you a hint. If you go to a school to visit, see what they have as services, even if you aren't undocumented or not documented. But that'll give you an idea as to how open they might be for diversity too.
Yes.
And my last little spiel is, since I worked in the International Student Office, I would also suggest that you see what services and activities and how many international students the school has. Because that gives you an idea too, as to how open and welcoming that school might be. If you see there's all kinds of events, the International Student Club, or how many people are there from different countries, is some question you could ask that gives you a hint as to how welcome and how you hope you feel within it.
I also want to make a point to that. Sometimes you will see institutions that count their international students as diversity, but they're not bringing in anyone who's underrepresented from their own country. So it's a really good point. Pay attention. Like how many international students are here? How many students, I've seen that in statistics in the way that they represent themselves. So you could be like, oh my God, this school's so diverse. And then you go check it out. You're like, wait, but everyone came from a different country. They came on a student visa from a different country. So they had to have a lot of money to be here. So how diverse is this really? How economically diverse is this institution? So it's a good point to pay attention to, what is the makeup of the student body? Who's actually, how the numbers being counted? And I had a second point that I forgot. But that's also something to pay attention to. And then just to your point about, Salem State, what we do, for example, in Bunker Hill, we have a whole page, like they have a whole page for undocumented DACA students that kind of outlines like what they do. So pay attention to that too. Research the school website. You might not be undocumented yourself, but if they're doing something for those particular students, that means they're providing a safe and welcoming environment to a very vulnerable population. So they actually, they care about their students. And so college websites are notoriously terrible to find information in. Always use the search bar. But use the search bar, see if they have a page for DACA for undocumented. Like I said, we have a checkbox for DACA on our application. We don't have a checkbox anymore for undocumented, just to protect people's identities. But we definitely, that is something that if a person is comfortable, coming out and disclosing, and then we're going to work with them and see what we can do, what resources are out there, what kind of scholarships, or what else can we do to help you. And so now I'm currently working on a presentation for Latinx families and doing something in Spanish and Portuguese and having those resources there, because we understand, for some of our communities, it's the whole family's going to college, right? It's a whole community of people that are coming together to get you to that finish line. And so that's something that I'm really adamant about, and I want to put forward from our office, is having those info sessions for parents and kind of, what else can you be doing to help? And so, yeah. Any other questions, comments? Don't be shy. All right then.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So I can over to Jill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Franci. This woman is such a wealth of knowledge. So we're really, really thankful that you are here. We are going to leave the rest of this time for you all to connect, mentors and mentees. Franci, if you wouldn't mind sticking around just for like 5 or 10 minutes, if anybody does have private questions for Franci, I know, I don't want to speak for you, but I know you'd be happy to speak with you all. And Franci did, I know she mentioned this, but she did work at UMass Boston, Bunker Hill Community College, and now Salem State. So if you do have questions about any of those particular institutions as well, I know.
Yeah, or about going to school in the UK.
Yes, or about studying in the UK. Very good point. So she knows a lot. So we are gonna let you have some free time. For those of you that are gonna sit and chat for a while, I do want to invite you, if you want to sit closer to the doors, if you want to go outside and sit in the bleachers or a bench, feel free to do that. But during this time, I know that you all were having really good conversation, before we even started the presentation. So continue talking. But the other things that could be helpful for you all to connect on is, I know many of the students have their Chromebooks with them, but you could log into Naviance and take a look at the colleges I'm thinking about list that all of you have, and discuss with your mentor a plan for researching these schools, perhaps visiting. You could compare your list with the diversity fly-in program list and see if any of those schools overlap, and you could think about applying for those programs and looking into those applications. The other thing that we'd love for you all to do is, by the time you leave here, make sure that you have a date or a plan to connect again before our next meeting on June 7th. Okay, all right, so we'll let you break out into your groups. We were calling these breakout rooms, but I realize in person they're not really breakout rooms. We do not have separate rooms for everybody tonight. But definitely feel free to grab another sandwich and go outside or spread out in the cafeteria. I had them like literally when I brought up the agenda. I was like, these are not going to be breakout. All right.